Bonjour, Anin. It's Majakwood again, and this is part 2 of the Greiving podcast. And I got some really good feedback from the community. I reached out and I asked some questions about grieving and what they would like me to talk about next, and I'll read off the 4 questions that I got right now. The first one is, what is anticipatory grief? And another one is, when will things go back to normal after the death of a loved one? And the third one is, what should I say to someone that is bereaved? And 4 is, how do I know if my children are dealing with their grief? And I thought those were some pretty good questions, so I got more questions, but I think that the 15-minute time frame for the podcast is enough to go over these 4. So we'll see if there has to be a part 3 or not. So I'll start off with, what is anticipatory grief? And anticipatory grief is what we can experience when we know we're about to experience a loss. And that's high anxiety, denial, being angry or impatient, and struggling with the realization of the impending loss and not feeling in control. And I could really relate to that big time when I was dealing with that experience when I was sitting my 2 years over in Oneida County. My mother just said that before I went in that she was diagnosed with cancer, and I had to watch her go through a chemo through glass and in visiting days, and each month when she was able to come visit me, she looked smaller and smaller and weaker, and she was dying, and there was nothing that I could do about that. And it made my time during that time very hard, and I really could relate to the feeling of there was no control, there was nothing I could do. I was literally, my hands were cuffed, and all I could do was just sit in my cell and wait until my release date and hope that I could still be there and be part of the last of her days. And there's things that I should have done. One of them was seek guidance from a counselor, a professional, so they could help me through that process. And that's a really big one, and we'll get more into why. The second question will be, when will things go back to normal after the death of a loved one? And I had to really think about this before I could write any of my answers up. I did some research, on the web, talked to a lot of people, and got their input. And what I came up with is that grief is not a road that leads back to our normal life. Grief is the process of change in your life, a painful process. There's no returning to a life that happened before the grief. We must come to accept that and come to make room for it in our new life and create a whole new normal for ourselves. And what does that mean? I'll just keep using my mother because it was the most devastating thing that happened to me, is that when I lost my mother, I didn't ever get my old life back, as much as I longed for it, and I perhaps grieved that way of life as well in my grieving process. Not only did I grieve my mother's death, but I grieved the life that I had with her and the chemistry of my life with it. And I don't know if that really makes any sense, but I'm pretty sure people could get it, you know, like just her very presence in my life, you know. She was the backbone of the family, so in order to move forward, I needed to accept that this is now my life and to deal with that pain and grief in order to move forward into my new life. And I had to create a new normal for my life. Does that mean that I forget all about my mom? No. This means that there will be other, you know, moments of sadness throughout my life. And for example, you know, when I heard this Michael Jackson song come on the radio, the song's called "I'll Be There." It was 2 years after she passed away, and I figured out, you know, like, I figured out my way out of like the initial darkness, you know. No, actually, it wasn't 2 years after she passed away. It was 2 years into my recovery from drugs and alcohol. And I felt that pain again from when I missed her. And I was never expecting to sit in my car crying for my mother as a full-grown man on my way to work. So with this being said, you know, there's no single time frame or process for grieving that will just let you emerge from grieving like it's done and over with. We don't never know when that time or that trigger will hit again. You know, and this leads me to my third question: what should somebody say to someone that is bereaved? You know, and when I was asked this question, I was like, what the heck does bereaved mean? You know, so I looked it up. And bereaved is being deprived of a loved one, especially due to a loved one's death. You know, how hard is it to say something to someone who's experienced a loss? I know that it's completely uncomfortable. It's like walking on eggshells to know what to truly say in the moment. Asking them what they need help with through this time is one thing that we could do when talking to someone going through this, you know, going through this grieving process, you know, asking them, you know, what can I do? What can I do to help? Is there anything I can do to help? You know, the whole entire let me know if you need anything, I believe, is really, really ineffective if you want to truly help somebody that's going through this. You know, let me know if you need anything, because the odds are, if anybody's going through this, they're not going to reach out in pain. You know, while they're going through pain, they're not going to reach out. I'm not saying that that's never going to happen, but the odds of it are really, really low. So if I were to ask something like, hey, I'm dropping off some meals or some deer meat or some venison tomorrow, is 6 p.m. a good time for me to drop some deer off for you? You know? And, you know, then they'll be more inclined to ask, you know, like, hey, can 5 o'clock work better? You know, and then you'll have more opportunity of a chance to help, even if it's little bitty helps. You know, when we're talking to somebody who's grieving, we must always remind ourselves that the people who are grieving grieve differently. Some may be open to talk about it. If they talk about it, cool, let them speak. You know, but if they're really clammed up and they're just sitting in there, sitting in the sour, sitting in the feelings, then we need to really just let them do that too. And by explaining that, you know, if it's a common person, you know, explaining like how I was feeling during that time, just letting them know that they're not alone is going to make them feel so much better. So how do I know if my children are dealing with grief? Is the fourth question. And, you know, I came up with, we often underestimate our kids. But one elder told me this, that little people are people. They feel everything in this world too. They may not necessarily have the language to effectively communicate with me about their grief, so they may act out in different ways, becoming irritable, whiny about physical issues, headaches, stomach aches, and they may be very, very clingy and have sleep problems and demand a lot more attention from their big people in their life. One thing to always remember is that our little people are watching us, and they are learning from their big people on ways to get through these difficult times. One of the main reasons why I wanted to make this podcast about grief is this exact topic right here. Our children watch us, so if they watch us grieving and hit the booze bottle or drugs immediately and see us just suck it up or escape from our reality, we can be sure that we are teaching our little people that this is how life is. And when it comes to their time to face all this, they will follow what they know. Humans are just like many other animals in life. We are creatures of habit. When a baby bear learns from its mother to climb a tree, to escape a pack of wolves, that baby bear carries that teaching with him or her its entire life and passes that knowledge down to the next generation, and that goes for humans as well. And that also goes hand in hand with our generational trauma as Native Americans we face every single day. So if you want to help break that cycle and to help our next generation of little people to a more healthy understanding of living, then I truly advise that you keep seeking knowledge on issues that are affecting your life in a negative manner. So to end this topic, I'm going to answer the main question that got me into this podcast in the first place. Is there a proper way to grieve? The answer is no. There is no exact recipe to grieve, and there is no time frame in which it just magically disappears out of our life. However, there are healthy and unhealthy ways to cope, and this is where we must educate ourselves so we can break the cycles of generational traumas. And I also want to give a message to our men. I don't care who you are or how tough you think you must be or how you believe you must act. If you keep hiding your pain through drugs and alcohol, you will find that your life will become more hurt. Holding on to that pain and not letting yourself go through your grief is like a poison that will keep you sick. The trickster is powerful. The bad medicines are powerful. And if you don't think they would use love, you have the love you have for your lost ones to keep you on the path of the trickster and to keep you using bad medicines, you are very badly mistaken. Do not lead our sons down this road. This road has taken too much of us. Suicide, overdoses, prisons. Now is our chance to break this once and for all. We have the knowledge to get out, and now is our time to flourish and regain everything our people have lost. The women are doing what the women are doing to help break these cycles, and now it's time for men to also do the same thing. A lot of us are incarcerated at a higher rate than any other race on the planet. A lot of us die 3 times higher than any other race on the planet from suicide and overdoses. As warriors, we must stand for something, and we must fight back now. And to fight back is to be able to show yourself to be vulnerable and to be able to heal. As a warrior, I'd rather have a scar, and that's coping with my grief. That's healing from my pain. I'd rather have a scar than an open wound that keeps me hurt through the rest of my life. So with that, I end this podcast. Miigwech for listening. I'll be back again. I'm enjoying doing this. You have a good night. Stay blessed. Miigwech. Gigo Abamin.